So in this video, we're going to talk about my thoughts on the new Lowrider ST. Let's check it out. Alright, what's going on YouTube? FXDLS Brooklyn is back in the building. And this has been one of my most highly requested videos. As you all know, I've been doing the sport touring thing on Dynas and FXRs for a pretty long time now. So when these new bikes came out, a lot of you all were asking what my thoughts were, you know, coming from that world before Harley Davidson just modernized it. So before we do the video, first and foremost, I do just want to give a major shout out to the good folks over at O'Tools Harley Davidson out in Wurtsboro, New York, for not only letting me take this thing out for the day and kind of do the test ride on my own terms, and not only that, but this is actually the owner Dan's personal bike, so major shout out to him for trusting me with this beautiful machine. So yeah, you know, obviously I'm not the only one, but I've definitely had an influence on putting the idea of sport touring, which is taking a smaller frame or taking a bike that's not meant to tour and pushing it to its limits and doing the bike trips. You know, myself and a bunch of other people have really taken that idea, and you know, that's definitely been a riding style for a lot of us, and it was cool to kind of see Harley Davidson pay attention to that and then respond to that with this bike. And some of you are gonna like what I have to say about this, and some of you are not gonna like what I have to say about this, because I know, you know, some of you just off the bat are just gonna be haters on anything that's not a Dyna or an FXR at this point, and you just want to hear me trash talk this, but honestly, I can't do it. You know, I'm just gonna first and foremost say that I feel like with this bike, Harley Davidson created this bike for me and for my riding style. And first and foremost, after just putting the miles that I just put on it in a couple different environments, I legitimately have very little bad I could say about this off the bat. So basically, O'Tools just sent me off, and I just did a pretty good mix of good back road mountain twisties as well as a good amount of highway riding. And within all of those different riding conditions, as well as just ripping through the towns at short speeds, this bike has excelled in every one of those conditions. I know many of you want to know how this fairing compares to my retro FXRT fairing on my Dyna, and what I'll say is, yeah, it's definitely way more nimble, and it definitely feels lighter than what's on my Dyna. You could feel that it's working in unison with the frame and the bike itself, which makes sense because this fairing was engineered for this bike. Whereas for my Dyna, I'm running a fairing that was made for a completely different frame, the FXR. And whereas I love my FXRT and my Dyna, don't get me wrong, I'll rip on that thing all day, this thing definitely felt a little bit more nimble, definitely a little bit lighter, and definitely felt like I could throw it around a little bit snappier than maybe I could on my 124 Lowrider S. As for the height of the shield, honestly, if I were to buy this bike, I wouldn't change it. I would not change it. I wouldn't change it at all. It had the wind hitting me in the perfect place. I was not getting any helmet buffeting. And again, I'm standing at 5'7", so I'm on the mid-range to shorter spectrum of Americans. And for me, again, that was perfect. So if you're standing around 5'7", this fairing and this windshield is going to be perfect for you. One of the things I was blown away by was this 117 engine. So you all know I'm running the big dog at this point, the 124 S&S crate in my Dyna. And I gotta say, man, I was really impressed with how this thing was just pulling in general, especially on the high end. You know, there was many times when I was on the highway and I would just look down at the speedometer and be like, how am I going that fast right now? And I think, again, that's a combination of a high performance engine as well as this fairing. Because when I did put the FXRT fairing on my Dyna, that was one of the first things I noticed, which was, hey, 80 miles per hour now feels like I'm going 60 miles per hour. You know, it really makes high speeds not actually feel like you're going that fast, and makes it sustainable if you're doing that type of riding. And then when I was in situations like going through the little towns where, again, it's a hot day right now, you know, we're in the middle of summer, this thing was running noticeably cool. And I don't know if that's because of this big oil cooler that they got over here, or if it's just the engineering of the motor itself, but I was really impressed with how cool the motor was running. And yeah, it just really excelled in all of those different environments. I think the other thing that's worth talking about is the foot controls, right? So I guess this is what Harley Davidson is calling mid controls. To me, when I first looked at it, it seemed like a little bit further forward than what my mid controls would be on my Dyna or my FXR, and I kind of felt like it was going to feel more like forward controls. But then in the seating position on the bike, it sat just right for me. So again, someone who's 5'7", it was perfect. I wouldn't mess around with those, but I could also see for somebody who's taller, like for taller folks, I don't think it's going to be comfortable. I don't think you're going to be that comfortable on this bike. But again, for mid-range, shorter folks, it's going to be perfect. Another thing that I think is worth noting is just the bags itself. So I'm not a really big fan of hard bags or clamshell bags just because it really does cut down on the amount that you could take on the road trips. But I remember opening this thing up, I was actually really surprised with how much space you actually will get in here. So again, these things look deceivingly slim, but you could actually fit a lot within these bags. And then probably one of the nicest things about it is you're getting that waterproof scenario, and you're also getting the security of being able to lock it if you need to do that. It's hard for me to say because I run Leather Pros on everything. I'm a huge fan of those bags. If I ever did get this bike, there's definitely a huge possibility that I would still throw Leather Pros on here, but these bags are great. I was happy with them. I'm happy with the storage on here, and yeah, it's a nice little add-on to this bike, you know, if you're planning on doing the touring or if you're just planning on day tripping, you know, that's all good too. So yeah, you know I'm all about that positive mental attitude. You know I'm going to say a bunch of nice things about this, but there's a couple things I would say and a couple things I would definitely change up if I were to ever buy this bike. The first thing is, when you look at the bars, they actually look not that bad. They almost look like a high bend or a mid bend. Looks like a little bit higher than what Harley Davidson would usually run. And like from the side, they actually look pretty good, right? But then the combination of where you're sitting with the seat as well as the bars puts you in a really strange riding position where it had me leaning forward like I was almost running drag bars or something. And for me personally, like for these bikes and these setups, I want to be sitting up straight and I want to have my arms parallel. That wasn't the situation with the setup. And again, I don't know if you'd have to change the seat to like a step up that would push you a little bit forward, or if you'd have to change the bars, or if you'd have to do a conjunction of both. But I would say for me, I wasn't really that stoked on the position of the rider. For me, I was just leaned forward a little bit too far for a bike that I would be planning to be on pretty much all day. So again, I would make arrangements to probably bring those bars up a little bit higher, maybe do a little pullback action or something, as well as change the seat to something like a step up to get that perfect riding position. And yeah, I mean, just the more I look at it, the more it kind of grows on me. You know, this is a pretty sick package for the cost that they are asking for. And when I first saw the fairing, it was just such a big departure from the retro FXRT fairing that I was like, it looks so weird. But now the more I see it, and especially after riding it, it kind of makes me understand some of the engineering that went behind it and some of why it looks the way it looks. And yeah, man, like I said, I didn't want to have this reaction to it, but I kind of knew a part of me was going to, and I really like this bike, guys. I really think Harley Davidson did knock this one out of the park. And then finally, some other honorable mentions here is the braking on this was excellent. I would not change the rotors. I would not change anything with the braking. Thought it was great. One of the things that would also be a huge reason of why I'd pick this bike up is that inverted front end. Whew, would that be nice to have on the Dyna? But to do that type of thing on my Dyna, we'd be looking at something around like $5,000 or more, just not in the cards right now. And as for the rear monoshock, right, everything working in conjunction, this thing just ran so smooth. And I think if I had to sum it up in one word of just the experience of this bike in totality, it would just be smooth. You know, the wind deflection, the suspension, plus the way the motor is running. This is probably one of the smoothest rides I've been on in quite a while. And again, I'm coming off of a hot rod 124 lowrider, and I'm coming off of an FXR from the 80s. So you know, this is feeling very different than what I'm typically on. And then of course you can see he does have a couple add-ons here. He's running those Reinhardt slip-ons as well as that crash bar. I believe that's a Bung King crash bar, and yeah, we did not have to use that today. So yep, do a little startup. So there you have it. That's my thoughts on the new 117 FXLR ST Lowrider ST 2022. I'm blown away, guys. I think Harley Davidson did knock this one out of the park, and you know, I'm really happy for anyone that picked up this bike. You know, I think that the package again that's being offered here, this one's kind of a no-brainer. So who do I think that this bike is for? Number one, I think this bike is for anyone that is going to be riding fast, specifically on highway miles, but also wants the maneuverability in the twisties and in the backcountry roads. It still wants to be able to maneuver even in tight situations. Like, I would be pretty happy with this thing if I was riding through New York City. I wouldn't feel like I'd be throwing anything around. You know, it was light enough to throw around. So yeah, you're definitely going to be wanting to be sitting at high speeds on the highway. I'm talking like 80 miles per hour, where it's legal, of course, or higher. If you're doing that all day, this is the bike for you. Also, you probably want to be not the tallest dude. I think my tall people out there, you're going to have to make some adjustments to this thing if you want it to work for you. I think this is more, again, gonna really shine for someone who fits an FXR really well, like myself, you know? So though, again, for reference, I'm 5'7", 150 pounds, and this thing kind of, like, I wouldn't ever feel like I needed to go any bigger than this. Like, I don't need a road glide, I don't need a bagger. Like, this would be my bagger. This is as big as I would go, right? And yeah, I mean, the other thing you'll probably notice is I have 0 riding footage in this video. The reason for that is I really just kind of wanted to ride it with no distractions. I didn't want to be talking, I didn't want to think about recording. I just wanted to ride it and gather my thoughts over the miles. So there's no riding footage that I've done on this right now. If you want to see riding footage of this thing, by all means, Marvel Kid 87's got a really great series of videos. They flew him out, I think, to California to hit the track on one of these things, so go check that out. Also, go check out Matt Laidlaw. He's always got great coverage of these new drops. So again, if you're looking for some more riding footage, check that out. There's also a whole bunch of new YouTubers that have started channels just around picking this bike up, similar to what I did with my Lowrider S back in 2016. So go find them, go check out their content, because you know, that's how I got my start. So I'm excited to see some of the platforms and channels that get started around this particular bike. But yeah, guys, I really don't know what to say. It's not, I kind of wanted to hate this. I kind of wanted to walk away and say, nope, I just want my Dynas and FXRs, but I would be lying to you if I said that this bike did not leave an impression on me. This bike definitely left an impression on me, and I'm going to be thinking about it. I'm going to be thinking about it for a while. So as always, stay safe, stay low. And on that, shout out to O'Toole's Harley Davidson, and FX Steel's Brooklyn is out.